Hi everyone, welcome to The Path to Reason. I'm your host Cindy Plaza, and tonight we're going to have a very special guest. It's Dr. Darrel Ray. Hi, Doctor. How are you going? How are you doing?
Very,
Sorry.
very good, Cindy. Good to be on the show tonight. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I mean, it's a real pleasure to have you here because you do a lot of work inside this atheist community in terms of help, in terms of education. So I think it's important to talk about you and what you do. So before we talk about all this, your books, your RfR, I'd like to ask you one question. Who is Darrel Ray, the human being? We know about Dr. Darrel Ray, the writer, the co-founder of RfR, all that, the activist. But who is Darrel Ray, the human being?
Well, that's a question I don't think a lot about most of the time. So that's a first, Cindy. Nobody's ever asked me that question before. I don't think.
Yeah, Anthony Magnobosco did answer the same last time, and I have a specific reason why I asked this question.
Oh, you do? Okay. So should I
Yeah,
answer the question first?
yeah, sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm not even sure where to begin, but I'm a person that loves people. I love helping people. I'm also a very outdoors person. I love mountain climbing, and one of my I don't think I'll achieve it, but someday I'd like to get back to Europe and climb in the Alps. I love climbing mountains. I'm not a technical climber. I don't do rock climbing. I'm not crazy, but I do like standing on the top of a beautiful peak and seeing out all hundreds of kilometers. I have climbed 48 of the highest mountains in continental United States. It's my
Nice.
hobby, going out every
Mhm.
summer and climbing. My psychotherapist colleague, Candace Gorham, and I go out and climb mountains every summer. We're looking forward to that this summer. I'm a
Nice.
grandpa. I got two
Mhm.
kids. I got two grandkids, and I enjoy. I run a campground. It's kind of funny. I'm retired, and I run a campground near my house because I live on a lot of property out in the forest, and I can host people to come in and camp. I got two campers on the property right now in tents, and I just enjoy sharing the outdoors with folks. So I don't know if I don't know if that's your question or not. It's what I
There
like
is no
doing.
good answer. There's no good
Okay,
answer.
there's no good answer.
Yeah, no, it's
Good.
just
I'm glad I didn't fail the test this early in our interview.
so the reason why I ask this question is it's kind of linked to the reason why I hate labels because in our languages we have nouns and we have adjectives, right? And adjectives add a property to something, and you can add as many properties as you want, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's to a person or to an object, you can put as many adjectives as you want. But if you use names, then you place some kind of identity to someone, and when you do that to a person, then that identity tends to reduce the person to that identity,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
and that's why I don't like labels, because we tend to want to reduce people to their labels. The problem is no one fits in one label, right? Depending on the context, you can be I can be someone with black hair, I can be trans, I can be French, and every time I will have different qualities associated, qualities or flaws, of course. So I yeah, the reason why I ask this question is to remind us and remind the audience that we are not just the people we see on talk shows, on we hear talk about, we see on social media. We also are human beings sharing different values.
Right.
And that's why I asked this question, to remind us, because we tend sometimes to forget that when we are invested a lot in something, we tend to forget that we are the rest,
Sure.
So
Sure.
so that's the reason behind my question.
Okay. Well, that's a good reason. I appreciate that. And it's the first time I've ever been asked that question. So
Yeah,
you
good.
have broke new ice for me, so to speak.
So first of all, we're going to talk about your two books. Can you remind me the titles?
Well, I actually have 4 books, but only 2 of them are relevant to our conversation today. In my previous life, I was an organizational psychologist, so I wrote books on the psychology of organizational development. My 3rd book was The God Virus: How Religion Infects Our Lives and Culture. And the 4th book was Sex and God: How Religion Distorts Our Sexuality. So those are the 2 that are relevant to our discussion today. I have been involved. I started out as a child in a very religious family and very religious environment in Wichita, Kansas, which is the very center of the United States, for those of you who are in Europe. And we're in church 3 times a week, read the Bible, had all sorts of religious activities and expectations. However, I was always very skeptical. I believed in evolution almost since the minute I heard about evolution. I thought that's beautiful, and I loved it. Of course, my family thought it was, well, at least a good portion of my family weren't very fond of the idea that I liked evolution. So I experienced resistance in my childhood and adult and into young adulthood, and I was very involved in my religion because I'm a person who likes to help people, and I saw my path as a path to a way to help people. So I became a minister. I got an undergraduate degree in anthropology and sociology, and then I went on to get a master's degree in religion because I thought I'd be a minister, and that was a good way to help people. But as I learned more and more about religion, the more I realized religion is really quite harmful. And even though I didn't go that direction initially, I really studied religion deeply and identified quite a bit of psychological damage that comes from religious indoctrination, including my own family. I mean, I've got family members that are just religious nutcases practically. And I see how they've damaged their own children and how they've hurt so many people in their life through their religious indoctrination, that I wanted to find a way to counter that. But I was an organizational psychologist then for many years, a clinical psychologist, then organizational psych. So I didn't really work in this area until about 2007 when I started writing The God Virus, and it was published in 2009. Well, I didn't intend to write a book. I didn't intend to write The God Virus. I intended to write an article. I was going to write one article, publish it somewhere, and be on with it. But I wrote the one article, and then I wrote a second article, and then I showed it to my best friend, who's a clinical psychologist. And he looked at the 3 chapters that I sent to him, and I said, I've never seen anything like this before. I never read anything like it. And my friend, Dr. Dan Dana, is a psychologist too, of course. So that comment on his part inspired me to keep writing. I wasn't writing a book. I was writing articles. And before you know it, I've got a whole damn book. And now I got to do, what am I going to do with this book? How am I going to get it published? Nobody knows about me. I'm not a common name in 2008. So I finally got the book published, and it became quite a bestseller. I was shocked at how well it sold. And it's told me there was a real need for this notion. Of course, the God delusion, Breaking the Spell, Christopher Hitchens' works, all those were out, but nobody was writing about the psychology of religion, how religion gets in your brain and makes you do crazy things like become celibate for your whole life if you're a Catholic priest, or devalue women as second-class citizens if you're a Baptist minister. Nobody was writing about that. So I thought that's an area I want to explore. And that's what I did with the God Virus. And then after the God virus came out, it was so successful. I was getting emails and responses from people, and they wanted to know more. And one of the chapters, chapter 5 of that book, was about sex. And I've been kind of a sex expert, or very interested in sex, since I was an adolescent, as most of us are. And I realized that the most popular chapter in that whole book was about sex. I was getting more comments than any other chapter. So that kind of inspired me to, 2 years later, to write Sex and God. And that too was very successful, because the fact is, Cindy, nobody was writing about these things from a secular perspective. I mean, yeah, we had Hitchens and Dawkins and Harris and all those folks, but none of them are psychologists, and they've never had a clinical practice where we have to sit down and look at people and listen to their stories and help them deal with the trauma that exists in their families and in their lives. So I saw an opportunity to write about those things. And then I saw in the sexuality side, there's tons and tons of books about sexuality, mostly from the Christian perspective. And even the books that are written as more secular tend to just avoid religion altogether. And I realize that religion is fucking people's lives up in their sexuality. And yet nobody's talking about how does that happen? Why is religion so darn interested in your sex life? And so that's what led me to write Sex and God. And I love the response I got from that book. It's probably one of the few times in my life I felt like just simply writing anything had major impact on a lot of people's lives. I have so many people write me and say, "You have made me feel more comfortable in my own body, in my own sexuality, through that book than anything else I've ever heard, seen, or done, or watched." And I've gotten hundreds of those kinds of emails and letters. So I hit a nerve by talking openly about how religion impacts sex. And I dare you to find a book on the planet that talks about it. I have not found one yet. There's maybe something I don't, or maybe there's something in French that I'm not aware of. But
No, I never heard about this. Did you have any pushback from religious institutions after you published those 2 books?
I have always been very pleasantly surprised at how little pushback I've ever gotten. I've gotten a few death threats. I've got a few threats that says, you're going to hell for what you do, but nothing serious. Nothing's ever happened. The worst thing that happened to me, though, and it was a direct consequence of writing the God virus, was I ran a business. I had 5 employees in my office. I'm sitting in my office right now. And I ran a business where I'd fly as far as Wales or California. I was doing business all over the world. And when I announced to my staff that I was writing this book, The God Virus, my office manager just turned white and said, "Darrel, we're going to lose all our clients." And I said, "No, I don't think so. We might use a few, but not all of them." Well, 6 months later, we'd pretty much lost all but 2 of my clients. Clients I had for 20 years just disappeared. And I had a lot of clients in Fortune 500 countries, companies, and even other countries that apparently, in apparently secular organizations like General Motors or Blue Cross Blue Shield, or major companies like that, including Cummins diesel engine. I mean, I had huge clients. These are gigantic companies, and worldwide companies too. And yet the human resource people were almost always religious. And there's the human resource people that hired me. So when I became out an atheist by publishing the book, now they had known me, some of them for 20 years. And it was because I published the book. It was because I came out and talked openly about being an atheist. That's when I lost my entire business. And thankfully, the God virus sold way more than I ever thought it would, and almost made up for the lost income for the next 2 or 3 years, which allowed me to be able to retire, because I'm retired now, and I've been retired for about 8 years. But I wouldn't wish that. It was pretty harrowing. It was pretty difficult for a while. because you never know when you put a book out. You don't know, is the book going straight in the trash can, or is it going to, be a bestseller, or most likely something much less than that. But I'm surprised. I mean, the God virus still sells well today. I mean, seriously, that book is amazing, and how often and how many letters I still get from people. It's very gratifying. You ask who I am as a human being, and I'll tell you, I think bottom line for me, Cindy, is I love making a difference in people's lives. And more importantly, I love making a difference in people's lives through other people, because I'm only one person. I can only touch a limited number of people in any given day or any given year. But if I teach other people, if I support other people, if I create structures and systems that allow other people to touch other people, then we can multiply our effectiveness by orders of magnitude very quickly. And that's where I get my jollies in life. That's what really makes me wake up in the morning excited to do something. And being retired is really I'm working harder now than I probably did when I ever worked, and I wake up ready to go to work every morning. I mean, every day. It's just, there's always something new coming through when you're dealing with this kind of stuff. Anyway, I hope that answered a little bit of what you're after.
Yeah, and it also answered the next question I had, which was, what sentiment made you want to write? And you said it. You said it's your will to help people. But I know that sometimes when I'm frustrated about something, I tend to want to write about it. Or when I see that someone shows, or some people show a lack of knowledge about something, I tend to make a video to explain it. And I was wondering if there was also something about that in your decision to write those two books.
Cindy, I know a lot of authors. I've talked to a lot of authors in my career. Some of us, all of us are different. We have our own motivations. But a minority, a small number of them, seem to have a similar, pattern that I do. I told you I wasn't intending to write a book. And then the book just kind of came out. It's like laying an egg. I didn't know I was pregnant, and here it is. There, it comes out. I've always been like that. It's like my brain builds up data and issues and ideas. And then one day I sit down and start writing, and it turns into an article, or it turns into a book. I can't say that I'm motivated by, I'm angry about something. That does happen sometimes, but that's not my modus operandi. I don't usually approach writing in that fashion. I'm much more inspired by just the buildup of ideas that happens in my mind. And I would just say that every book I've written, like I mentioned earlier, 4 books, and they all went the same way. I usually wrote an article or two to help my mind kind of acclimate to what I was thinking about. And then after an article or two and they were published and I could see that people were responding to the ideas, then the book came out. But I certainly sympathize and understand the other approach, which you're talking about. It's an emotional expression. It's a way to get something off your chest. It's a way to express yourself to other people. I have certainly done that, but I don't think that's my way of writing. It is a way of writing.
Okay. What frustrates you the most in today's America regarding sex and what's around this topic?
Oh man, you got another 4 hours to talk here?
I have, but I think you don't.
Yeah, I told you before we started, I'm getting a haircut in an hour, and I want to make sure and make my appointment. My partners actually found somebody to come out to our house and cut our hair out here. We did that back in August, but I've got COVID hair right now. My earphones hide it. Well, Cindy, in the United States, I have interviewed people from all over the world, and I've interviewed for my former podcast, the Secular Sexuality podcast. I interviewed people in Germany. I've interviewed people from France, from Australia, and I see what other countries are doing in the area of sex education, especially Germany. I really was impressed to learn how Germany approaches sex education in their school system. And it seems to be pretty straightforward and forthright, unencumbered with religious ideas, or less encumbered with religious ideas. I don't know what it's like in Belgium, and I'm not as familiar with the French system. In England, it's kind of hit or miss because there's still a lot of religious. But in the United States, even though we're apparently a secular country, or we clearly our Constitution was, religion has been able to infect, as the subtitle of my book, how does religion infect our lives and culture? Well, the way it's done it is that it's infected our sexual education. And it's come in and said, there's so many school districts that are scared to death to teach basic sex education ideas. And so we've got a whole system in the United States of sexual misinformation based upon religious ideas around masturbation, about sex before marriage, about abortion, about birth control, you name it, any subject related to human sexuality, there is a massive amount of miseducation, even at a criminal level of miseducation about basic sexual ideas.
And disinformation also.
Pardon?
And also disinformation.
Yeah, it's very much just a disinformation campaign, if you will, because what a religion has found, patriarchal religions specifically, have learned over the last 2,600 years or so, that if you control someone's sexuality, you control the person. That's every cell in your body is sexual. That's just the way we're made as sexual creatures. Evolution, once your body starts developing, all the genes to make a sexual organism are in every cell, and some cells turn them on, some cells turn them off. It's basic biology, actually. So religion has found if they can control your sexuality, then they can make you do a lot of things, and they can make you do some pretty crazy shit. And I mean really crazy. I have had so many people tell me, Darrel, you want to be an atheist so you can sin, so you can be sexual or any way you want. You don't have to conform to God's laws around sex. They tell me that, and I say, well, the most perverted sexuality that I can think of, the absolutely most perverted, is being a Catholic priest or a Catholic nun. I mean, that's pretty perverted to say, I will never have sex the rest of my life. It's also dangerous because your body is going to be sexual, whether you want it to be or not. It's just there. The hormones are going to flow. And I mean, you can even see the extremes to which religion goes in some cases, to the point of, Jesus and Paul both in the Bible talk about self-castration. I mean, that's pretty damn crazy, but it is a sexual idea. I think, and I look at Catholicism, I look at especially American Protestantism, and even Buddhism. It doesn't matter. Islam, they're all obsessed with sex. I think about sex a lot, but I'll tell you, I think that Baptist minister that's preaching every Sunday in the pulpit is probably thinking about it more than I do. And he's looking at porn more than I do. We know from research that everybody looks at porn, but Baptists look at it more than atheists do. Catholics use porn more than Baptists do. Catholics use porn more than atheists do. So there's evidence that sexual drive is being suppressed within the religion, and it's coming out somewhere else. It's like putting the lid on a toothpaste tube and then squeezing the toothpaste tube as hard as you can, sooner or later that tube's going to explode in some other direction. And exploding in that other direction is molesting children in the Catholic Church, or Baptist ministers raping young girls, or Pentecostal ministers having sex with 3 or 4 or 5 of the adult women in their church. I mean, you can just go down the list, scandal after scandal after scandal. And the vast majority, not all, but the vast majority are sexual scandals. Now, there's financial scandals too, but in some ways, financial scandals are not seen as bad as sexual. I mean, financial scandals are seen as worse in many churches than sexual scandals. We can forgive you for having sex with 3 women that you're not married to, even though that's a law of God that says you'll go straight to hell. But we can't forgive you from taking money out of the offering plate. That's one thing we will really get mad at you about, because religion needs its money. That's for sure. And whether you screwed the wrong people, I mean, look at the Catholic Church. They've been hiding pederast priests for centuries. And everywhere the legal system has finally gotten strong enough to challenge the church, we've seen thousands and thousands of priests molesting and raping and abusing tens of thousands of children. And there's so many countries like Brazil and Peru, many countries in Africa where the Catholic Church has actually been for centuries, but the legal systems aren't strong enough to challenge the Catholic Church. So you don't have any clue how many people have been abused in those cultures. In the United States, or in some states in the United States, or in Australia, or in the United Kingdom, or especially in Ireland, there have been government reports that have been able to document this stuff. So we're pretty sure, and I'm positive, that there's so much abuse going on within these churches, but that abuse will never be exposed if the secular legal systems aren't strong enough. And that's I'm not sure why I was going there, but lost my train of thought.
Yeah, that reminds me, you mentioned Ireland, and there's been this story in the last few years where nuns who were supposed to take care of single moms.
Yep.
And they just let the kids die, and they put them in just big holes without a name, without anything, just because the Catholic Church says that if a child is born outside marriage, then it's not sacred or whatever they call it, and
right.
it doesn't deserve a funeral.
Yes, right. Horrible. Hundreds and hundreds of infants just basically thrown away. And there's similar. It's not just Ireland. Ireland had the guts to actually do something about it. They finally got a political system and a legal structure that was strong enough to challenge the Catholic Church. But you can bet that right now it is probably happening in the Philippines. It's probably happening in Brazil. You know, somewhere else on this planet, that very thing still is going on. Because the Catholic Church doesn't change its stripes. That animal still acts the same way as when it's out of sight of a legal system, for sure. You know, I'm the Madeleine. I can't remember the name of there's a name for that scandal in Ireland. I'm forgetting the name right now. But yeah, I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so we're getting to the half of this interview. So let's talk about RfR.
All right. Well, I'm always happy to talk about RfR.
Of course,
and one of the reasons I want to talk to you specifically, Cindy, was we're really working hard to expand RfR internationally outside the United States. Of course, it started here in the States, but this is a need to help people deal with the consequences of religious indoctrination. It's everywhere. It almost doesn't matter. So in 2009, I started recovering from religion, partly in response to the feedback I was getting about my book, The God Virus. People said, I need help. So I started what I thought would be a small self-help group here in Kansas City, where I live, and it exploded. I could see instantly there was a huge need for this, and nobody. I mean, if you're an alcoholic and you want to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a group on every street corner practically. Even though Alcoholics Anonymous, never mind. I've got a whole bunch of opinions about that.
Yeah, I know.
Terrible organization. But I thought, well, let's get a peer model, a peer support model, and that's what I did. I created it, and so now we have an organization that's 12 years old now, and we have volunteers. People come to us from all over the world to volunteer and help. Right now, we cover 16 time zones around the planet. We have volunteers from as far away as France and Germany and Russia, east of us, and west of us, Australia and New Zealand. So we have volunteers from anywhere. We got volunteers from Mexico City, from Argentina, and we've got Spanish-speaking volunteers, French-speaking, and of course, predominantly English-speaking volunteers. But we have a whole lot of services. Anyone on the planet with a internet access, like you and I right now, could chat in, or you could chat in and talk to one of our trained volunteers. We've got right now we've got about 275 plus or minus volunteers working in some capacity around the world. We've got about 70 volunteers of those 275. We've got about 70 of them that take chats every day. So just before I signed on here to talk to you, I was reading a chat that was coming in, and I was watching one of our chat line agents talking to a 14-year-old girl in West Africa who's incredibly intelligent and bright and much better educated than her parents are, evidently. 14 years old, and she's basically quoting Richard Dawkins, and talking about the abuses of religion and how she's depressed and she can't get any help because her parents think she's possessed of demons.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous. It's dangerous for her. And she was describing abuses that she's experienced in Catholic schools. And she's thankfully in a public school now, but first 6 years of her education were in Catholic schools, where she was describing to our agent that she'd been beaten with chains by nuns. I mean, this is serious shit that she's experiencing. I tell you that because we get these kinds of stories from all over the world, and our chat line agents have to go through a lot of training to be able to respond and empathically respond to these kinds of chats and phone calls. We also have 5 different phone lines, one from all over North America, from the United Kingdom, from South Africa, from New Zealand, and Australia. So people can literally pick up their phone in their home and dial us directly. And we'll talk to anybody. That we also have an internet phone system. You could dial through the internet and talk to us as well. So our mission is hope, healing, and support. That's what Recovery from Religion is. And our executive director is Gail Jordan, who is an amazing leader who's doing incredibly good work in coordinating all this activities that we have developed. And we have an incredibly good board, a very active board, and a totally 100% donating board. Every one of our board members donates. And our board is not the kind that sits back on its hands and puts it on their resume. They are they're almost every day doing something to support our mission as hope, healing, and support for recovery from religion. We have local groups that meet. Like I said, that's the way the organization first started, with just a local group sitting down in a restaurant and talking about issues related to religious recovery. With the pandemic, we've not been able to do that. So we moved our face-to-face groups online. And so people are literally meeting by Zoom multiple times a week. So we'll have a meeting in Sydney, Australia, and another in London, and another one in Mexico City, all throughout the week. And so if you want to join one of those, you can, because there's no restriction when you're on Zoom. When we go back to face, we may take that back a little bit. But boy, one thing that's happened, Cindy, is the pandemic has taught us how to create online groups across, internationally really easily. So I was involved in a Sydney, Australia chat or group meeting on Zoom about a month ago, and they had 26 people show up to the meeting, and they spanned everywhere from New Hampshire in the United States to Japan. Now, but it was a Sydney, Australia group, so that was pretty cool, and the amount of help that people get by just talking to each other. I mean, if you got an ex-Mormon, an ex-Jehovah's Witness, an ex-Baptist, an ex-Scientologist, an ex-Catholic, and they're all sitting in the room at the same time, and all we ask is, like, how did religion hurt you? How have you benefited from leaving? That's all you have to ask these folks, and they'll talk for the next 3 hours, and you'll see light bulbs coming on in their head, because that ex-Catholic will look at the ex-Baptist and say, wow, that's exactly what happened to me. And you're a Catholic and I was a Baptist, or a Scientologist, or a Moonie. We even have had Moonies in our groups. You name it. We ex-Muslims. We get quite a few ex-Muslims in some of our groups. So it's a labor of love for our volunteers. They love helping other people, and they have gone through incredibly detailed training about how to conduct these groups and how to respond on a chat line. So we don't let anybody touch our clients unless they've gone through this extensive training. But I'll tell you, once they get through that training and they interact with somebody, it's so rewarding to hear somebody say, thank you. I can't talk to anybody in my family. Nobody in my neighborhood understands me. And you're the first people who responded and been able to help me find resources or understands what I'm going through. It's just really fun to see that kind of thing.
So your job is not, and I insist, is not to deconvert people, right?
We're very clear about that. We don't convert or deconvert. That's not our job. We're here to help you wherever you are on your journey. If you've got doubts and questions, then we're here to talk to you about what those are. We're here to help you find resources. I mean, we get this a lot. Somebody will chat in and say, I'm not an atheist. I don't want to be an atheist, but I've been reading the Bible, and there's so much crazy stuff in that Bible. I want to understand what's going on. And we'll just say, well, okay, here's some links. We may link them to the Skeptic's Bible. We may link them to a Bart Ehrman lecture. We may show them David Fitzgerald's book, Nailed, 10 Reasons Why Jesus Probably Never Existed. So there's resources they've never heard of, and we've got them at the tip of our fingers. They have to make their own decision. And if somebody says, I can't stand to be in my church anymore, but I don't want to leave church, or I don't want to leave God, we'll help them find a religion that works for them. Maybe it's becoming a Unitarian, or maybe a Quaker, or maybe a Buddhist. We are not here to tell you how to live your life. Granted, and most of us are atheists, but we also know that we did not become an atheist because somebody told us how stupid we were. That doesn't work that way. We didn't become an atheist because we hated God. Those aren't the reasons. And we have to respect that our reasons are not your reasons. Whoever's calling into us has got their own trauma, their own difficulty. And we have to respect that and help them where they are, not where we think they should be. And that's a huge difference. The average person on the street, if you go and ask them for help, they're not going to help you where you are. They're going to help you where they think you should be. So if they happen to be a Baptist, they're going to say, well, come to my church. If they happen to be a Catholic, they'll say, come to my church. They won't say, well, where are you now? And what do you want to do with your life? That's where we are.
Yeah, because they think they have a solution to all those questions. So they gave you that solution.
Yeah. And we have solutions to none of the questions. We will give you
Yeah, that's the
resources.
problem. Mm.
We will give you the resources for you to find your own solutions. Because quite frankly, lives lived on somebody else's ideas are not very fulfilling. Lives lived on your own is far more fulfilling. So if you can get away from the fact that you have to live a certain way, a certain life, you're basically giving your life away to the church, or giving your life away to the minister, or giving your life away to the Bible. You're not living your own life. You're living somebody else's version of your life. And that's dangerous, actually. It leads to mental illness. It leads to crises. It leads to disfellowshipping and disowning other people. It leads to breaking up families over Jesus. I mean, there's so many bad
violence.
things. And violence, domestic violence is very high among, in fact, child abuse and domestic violence. The two best predictors of child abuse or domestic violence are alcohol and drug use and religiosity. The more religious you are, the more likely you are to abuse your children. So, or your spouse. Those are the two best predictors of those problems.
So how is RfR organized exactly? Because if you have so many people in working in different countries, do you have a single platform, or do you have how does it work?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, we've got a platform. We use Slack. It's called Slack. It's a online software. It's actually what most gigantic corporations use. In fact, a lot of our volunteers come in and say, yeah, we ask them, can you work on Slack? And they say, sure, I do it every day on my work. So, it's become gigantic. It's as common as what we used to think of as Microsoft Office software. It's just ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Well, Slack's everywhere. And we have organized it in several things. We got a board of directors. I'm the president of the board of directors. Gail Jordan is the executive director. She kind of runs the day-to-day operations. And then we got sub-departments. And all of these are the only person that gets paid in this whole organization is Gail. And we have to pay an executive director, of course. We don't pay her very much, though, I'll tell you. She basically volunteered for 5 years before we even were able to get enough donation money to start paying her salary. But beyond that, everybody else is a volunteer. All the board members, me, and each department is run by volunteers. So we've got the chat line department is run by a volunteer, and underneath that one person, Eric is his name. We've got a bunch of Erics that work at RfR. He has about 60 or 70 people that actually take the chats every day. And under him are trainers and mentors. So within that 60 people are people that are responsible for training new people coming in, mentoring new people, and helping people with self-care. Because as you might imagine, Cindy, this can be very intense. People come in with some, I mean, I was just telling you, the girl from Africa just this morning, that's a dangerous situation she's in. And we can't help her. We would love to help her. But best we can do is give her resources, be a supportive ear, tell her to call, chat back anytime she wants. And maybe we can help her move on. Now, if she was 16, we could help her even more, because we have got an online group that it's a private group within Slack that people can get invited to. So if we get somebody chatting or calling with us and saying, I'm an ex-Baptist, I'm an ex-preacher, I'm an ex-Mormon, or whatever, once we finish with the chat, we'll invite them. If we think they qualify, we'll invite them to join our internal chat system. And within that, they can talk to other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-Mormons, ex-Catholics, ex-Buddhists, ex-Muslims. We've got 23 different subcategories, in almost all the major religions, plus an LGBTQ and a sexuality, and a whole section on dealing with family issues as once you leave religion. I mean, all these
Parenting,
issues.
maybe?
Yes, absolutely. Parenting is a very popular thing people want to know about. So there's a whole area, again, run by 2 directors, run the internal, we call it our community. And then we have another director over all the local meetup groups. And then we have another program is called the Secular Therapy Project. I think you've heard of that. And that's a project to register and vet therapists who will not send you back to Jesus, who really do understand what religious trauma is and use evidence-based scientific approaches to mental health. And that's run by its own subsystem. There's 3 directors of the Secular Therapy Project, co-directors, and several other people working in that. And they vet therapists who apply to us to get into our system. And then anyone can search our system and find a therapist through our system. And they'll be confident they find a therapist within the Secular Therapy Project at seculartherapy.org. Then that person is well-trained, well-qualified, licensed in whatever political entity they live in, and they use evidence-based methods. You can't guarantee that if you just look somebody up on the internet, or if you go to Psychology Today. You cannot guarantee they're not a Christian who calls himself a counselor or a psychologist who really wants to get you back into the church or convert you to their Scientology practice or whatever it is. Or New Age bullshit. There's a lot of New Age shit inside of psychotherapy, and you want to avoid those like the plague.
So this project, does it list therapists only in the US, or is it also outside the US?
We actually have therapists in 7 different countries. We've got therapists in Australia, all over North America, Canada, South Africa. We got 1 therapist in South Africa. We have 5 therapists in the United Kingdom, 1 in the Netherlands, not too far from you. No, I'm wrong. I think they're in the Belgium. I think we've got 1 therapist in Belgium. We would love to be expanding. We want to expand in 2 ways. We want to expand recovering from religion services outside of North America, and we currently have a team of people in Australia that are setting up an entire structure that will allow us to serve Australia within Australia more. The closer we are to our clients, the better. And I'm sitting in Kansas. I'm not very close to Sydney, Australia. So, excuse me, we've got a great team of local people, one of whom is on our board. Sherry D'Souza is on the board of directors for Recovering from Religion, but she lives in Sydney, and she is heading up the team that's creating the services, the locals, the chat line, and secular therapy in Australia. We think we've got the template, if you will, to make that a very strong group of people in Australia providing services. And from there, we want to move into South America and Central America, where we've got a pretty good set of people, although we need more, in the Spanish-speaking world. I just had a meeting yesterday with a person in South America that we may start building a structure for providing our services in South America to the predominantly Spanish-speaking world. And we may be able to move into Brazil, but, we need a team of Portuguese-speaking people there. We'd love to be have a stronger presence in Germany and in France, Belgium, Netherlands. And there is a clear need there. You would be surprised at how many chats we get from France and from Germany, from cult members, people whose religious indoctrination is very damaging. I mean, you think of France and Germany as pretty secular, and they are, but boy, there's still a lot of religious bullshit going on. And so there's a need for those. Russia, it's quite surprising. We've got 1 volunteer from Russia, and we do get quite a few chats. I mean, not nearly as many as other countries, but we get enough chats for Russia to realize that there's a lot of crazy religious stuff going on in Russia as well. So that's where we're going right now. We would really like, if we can get enough volunteers in a given area, then we can create a structure for providing our services more intensely in whatever area that is, whether it be Belgium or France or Germany. We're pretty strong in England right now, I mean, in the United Kingdom, but we haven't really created a complete structure like we're doing in Australia. We'd like to see that happen.
Yeah, because I guess it depends on the need. Because as you said, France, Belgium are very secular countries, and it surprises me that you have the need to vet some therapists here, because either in Belgium or in France, the laws are pretty strict regarding therapists, and I've never heard, and I really can't imagine seeing a therapist here in Belgium or in France pushing religion through someone. So, but on the other hand, yes, there are still Jehovah's Witnesses. There are some creationists coming up in France too. So Mormons are also getting stronger in Belgium. So I think, creating a structure, at least the aim should be to have a French-speaking community, at least.
Yeah,
not necessarily placed in France or Belgium, but at least some people with that language.
Right. We actually don't provide services in French or German right now, although we do have volunteers that speak French and German, and they're actually native speakers. We would need more volunteers to be able to create that structure. We'd love to see that happen. So if somebody's interested in volunteering and helping us in that area, they can go to recoveryfromreligion.org and hit the volunteer button and go through our training, and then we can start working towards that. We had 2 people in Germany that were very interested in helping us, and we were just getting started when COVID hit. And after COVID, we're not sure where that's going to go or whether they're still available. We're not even sure yet. So it's just a slow process. We've been doing this for 12 years. We get bigger and bigger. We've seen a 100% growth rate for almost 3 straight years. But 100% growth rate for 3 straight years is great. Trouble is, it's a very big planet with 7 billion people, and about 3 billion of them are in desperate need of our services. We're not sure we'll catch them all just in the next year or two. There's plenty to do. I'll tell you, plenty to do.
Did you already make some ads on Facebook or any social media to attract people?
Yes, it depends on our donations, how much money we have coming in. But we do pay for Facebook ads. We're expanding some of that right now. And it helps, but that's not the answer. We can spend a lot of money advertising, but where it's best and most valuable is people like you talking to people like me on the internet. And when this recording goes up, people will be able to watch it. They can understand what we do and volunteer if they want. And telling other people about us and hitting like buttons and reposting things that come from our website or our Facebook page, that helps. And it probably helps more than paying for advertising. It's word of mouth. I mean, we did not advertise at all. We didn't pay for any advertisements when we got the 5 therapists from Australia or the 5 therapists from the United Kingdom or the one from the Belgium or South Africa. None of those came from our advertisement. They came from word of mouth or seeing something we're doing on the internet. So, and I travel when we're not having COVID. I travel quite a bit, making talks and speeches and raising awareness. And Gail travels quite a bit. We have some volunteers. We have a whole group of about 8 volunteers that we call ambassadors, and they have to go through special training. And once they're approved as an ambassador, they can speak for Recovery from Religion. They can go to a group in their local town, or they can go to a conference, and they can talk as an official representative of Recovering from Religion. Because I'll tell you, Cindy, I'm on 4 podcasts in the next this weekend, starting today through Sunday. I'm always talking to people. It's just so Gail and I and the board all realize we have to clone us. Gail and I cannot be doing this like we do now. So it's good. If somebody wants a direct talk, they can contact us. I'll do what I'm doing with you. If I don't have time, or if I think I've got somebody better, we can give you one of our ambassadors. And we want to spread the word, and we want more volunteers. Of course, we want more donations. What we do requires money, even though almost everybody works for free. We still have websites to support and travel to support. And, there's a lot of costs in doing something like this. But I dare say, dollar for dollar, we produce more good dollar for dollar than almost any other secular organization on the planet. Because most of what we do is free. We don't charge anything for any of our services. Everything's free. The only service that would cost anything is if you actually go to a therapist. The therapists themselves would charge you, but we don't charge you to use our system to find the therapist. That's all free.
Okay, so it's almost time for you to get your haircut. So
yes.
So let's wrap this up. So thank you again for coming to my show. It was very nice talking to you. So can you just tell people where they can find you at the moment?
Sure, they can find me at Recovering from Religion or on Facebook. Just Darrel at Recovering from Religion is my email, and it's 2 R's, 1 L, Darrel. And of course, my books are on Amazon. I've got both the God Virus and Sex and God. And I think if you're interested in sex, this is the book you should read. If you're interested in how psychology of religion works, this is the book you should read.
I put the link to RfR and the books in the description of this video. So
okay, good.
People can have it. So thanks again, everyone who was watching tonight or today, depending on where you are.
Yes.
Please like and subscribe, as Dr. Ray just said, not for me, but for him,
right?
Of course. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, share.
Well, if there's people oftentimes call us and want to know, how can I be a quote atheist activist? And the fact is, not everybody can be an atheist activist, but you can sure support them by simply letting people know about us. This is activism at the baseline. This is activism that actually helps people live better lives.
Because as you said, most of the recruitment you do is word to mouth.
Yes,
so
right.
That's how we get word to mouth. It's by sharing the content.
Yes, exactly. All right. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone, and see you next time.
Okay.